There we go. We'll start over. Let's try it again. What's going on, everybody? We're here. We're live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Hopefully, you all can see and hear me clearly. Today is going to be a really good show. It's going to be an interesting show because I see the con game going on right now, the trick bag that's getting ready to happen, and how they're getting ready to switch this whole Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision, the reversal of Roe v. Wade. They're going to flip the script and start blaming black men and have black men be in the face of it. But before we get too deep into that, what I want to do as we allow some more people to come into the live stream is that I wanted to give you guys an update for those of you who don't know about what happened in New York concerning the legislation that was passed by New York City Council, in which they were supposed to be permitting non-citizens the right to vote in New York local elections. Well, that was actually shut down, which is a good thing. That doesn't make logical sense at all whatsoever that non-citizens who have, in which the only criteria is that they be in New York City for 30 days. If they've lived there for 30 days, all of a sudden have the right to vote in the city. That doesn't make logical sense. You could be here 30 days, vote, and then by next year, you're on a plane out back to your country, but you voted on some issue that was critical to the people in New York City, and you don't even have to live through the repercussions and consequences of you voting for or against a particular issue. That's completely crazy. Thank you. What is it? The black Democrat, Jay the Informant. Oh, okay. Jay, formerly known as Jay the Informant. What's up, Jay? Love your interview with Jesse Lee Peterson. Man, I ain't interviewed no Jesse Lee Peterson. I don't know who you're talking about. But let me read that article real quick. Like I said, piece of it before we dive too deep into the actual discussion that I want to have. Okay, so here goes the article right here from the New York Times. And like I said, it's just a quick update, right? And the article is titled, New York City's non-citizen voting law is struck down. All right, so let me just read that off really quick. Like I said, a little quick update. A law that would have allowed non-citizens, a law that would have allowed non-citizens to vote in local elections in New York City was struck down on Monday by a Senate Supreme Court justice in Staten Island who said it violated the state constitution. The measure, which was passed by the city council in December, would have allowed more than 800,000 permanent legal residents and people with authorization to work in the United States to vote for offices such as mayor and city council. But Justice Ralph J. Porizo, I believe his name is, ruled that the new law conflicted with constitutional guidelines that only eligible citizens can vote to give non-citizens a right. I'm fumbling. Let me read that last paragraph again. My fault. But Justice Ralph J. Porizo ruled that the new law conflicted with constitutional guidelines that only eligible citizens can vote. To give non-citizens a right to vote would require a referendum, the judge wrote. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be some sort of an attempt to make an amendment or a referendum in New York to give non-citizens the right to vote. I'm pretty sure that's coming down the pipeline, but as of right now, that's been completely shut down in New York. No, non-citizens no longer have the right to vote. So that didn't last long at all. So now let's get into the actual topic at hand. Let me pull this down, and I'm going to pull a new article or multiple articles up on the screen for you. Okay, so give me just a second while I bring some stuff on the screen and move this out the way. And now we're going to get into this whole situation with Roe v. Wade, Clarence Thomas, and Joe Biden trying to pass the buck over to make Black Americans, and particularly Black men, the face of this whole Roe v. Wade situation. Now, we're going to first start here, right? As a lot of you know already, there was this rally that happened with Donald Trump who attended, and there was a pretty big slip up that occurred. A slip up that occurred in which a woman who was running for office, in which Donald Trump was attending that rally, she messed around and told the truth about what Roe v. Wade is all about. And I'm going to play that for you right now. Give me just a second.
That you need to cast your vote for a truly wonderful person, Mary Miller, respected by everybody. Mary, come on up. Come on up.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, President Trump. It's such an honor to be able to welcome you to God's country. I'm in front of this massive crowd that loves you. I'm so honored to have your endorsement. President Trump, on behalf of all the MAGA patriots in America, I want to thank you for the historic victory for white life in the Supreme Court yesterday. Our victories for life and the Second Amendment would never have been possible if the never Trump rhinos had gotten their way.
Right. Look, she knew she messed up when she said that. When she said that, she knew she messed up. And I saw some of you in the comment section saying she didn't slip up. She didn't slip up. I get it. When I say she slipped up, she messed around and said what she meant, but she didn't mean to say that. But she meant what she said, is that was a victory. Roe v. Wade is a victory for white life. And you and I all know and understand this already because a good deal of you know and understand the work of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who since the 60s up until her death, I believe she died about 5 years ago, originated the conversation around the fact that when it comes to the system of racism, white supremacy, this whole thing really exists for the purposes of preventing white genetic annihilation, right? So the reason that I want to bring this up right now is not so much to go deep into Frances Cress Welsing's the ideology behind what she's saying, but I want to make sure that I play this clip of her to give her her proper shine, because what we need to make sure happens in situations like this is that we don't allow Democrats, liberals, progressives, whatever you want to call it, right? Democratic socialists, none of those terms mean anything to me. But when it comes to that particular group, especially concerning this situation that's occurred, and with a slip up like that, now what you'll see is those that you would call the liberal left, right? White liberals and their people of color minions will now move forward to bastardize and steal Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's talking points surrounding the fear of white genetic annihilation. And they'll take that and move it and push it towards and put it on conservatives, right? Or Republicans, as if, hey, you see this ideology that is being circulated around here, whether we're talking about white replacement theory and the fear of genetic annihilation, these are these horrible conservatives that believe in this stuff. And they're going to bastardize Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's talking points as if she wasn't also talking about you, the white liberal. You see, the only difference between the white liberal and the conservative is that they have a difference of understanding concerning how things should work culturally, right? So when it comes to the white liberal, they may not necessarily care so much, right, about the aborting of babies and the head count, you can say, concerning the white population in America, so long as they still have economic control, like in South Africa. In South Africa, Black South Africans make up what? 98 some odd percent of the population, maybe more than 99% of the population. But the white population in South Africa own, run, and control economics, all the resources, all the businesses, everything in the country, right? And that's always been the case in this country concerning the differences between Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and white liberals. The one thing that they agree upon is that we'll still remain on the top economically. And as long as we still remain on the top economically, then the system of racism and white supremacy is perfect. Everything's working just fine. But the difference is that Republicans or conservatives, they want to make sure that they keep their numbers. White liberals don't necessarily care as much because they feel as long as we're economically still on top, none of that really matters. Kind of like what's going on in South Africa. Now, let me play this video by Frances Cress Welsing real quick, because like I said, I want to give her flowers. I want to give her props. I want to make sure that for those of you who are kind of new to her, you know and understand who she is and what she's about and what she originally started as far as the conversation surrounding white genetic annihilation. Okay, now let me give me just a second. Oops. Let me fix the screen and share this on here. Now the video, this is a channel that I'm going to play the video from. This channel is called Black More Films. So if you want to watch more of the Frances Cress Welsing videos that they have on here, as well as the interviews that they have of a multitude of other people on this YouTube channel, by all means, feel free to come to this channel. Once again, this YouTube channel is called Black More Films. That's the name of this YouTube channel. Now let's pay our little respects to Frances Cress Welsing before we get too deep into the conversation concerning Joe Biden and Clarence Thomas.
Well, the Cress theory was an attempt back in the late 1960s to explain what I thought is it is a Cress theory of color confrontation and racism, white supremacy. An attempt to, as a psychiatrist, as a Black psychiatrist, to understand, well, what exactly is this thing that we call racism, white supremacy? Looking at why do white people behave in the way that they do. You see, and concluding that it has to do, number one, with their minority status on the planet, their genetic recessive status, in that they could experience genetic annihilation, in that the overwhelming majority of people on the planet are Black, brown, red, and yellow, and whites constitute fewer than 1/10 of the people on the planet.
One of the things that we find that is happening now is there's this constant countdown you see on the news all the time. So when America's a majority minority nation, so there's still this countdown happening in terms of when white folks will be in the minority.
They will be a majority minority, which is nonsensical. There will be a white minority if the non-white, if the Black, brown, red, and yellow people are here. They will be the majority and whites will be the minority. You see, and it's a illogical statement to talk about a majority minority. I mean, which is like white supremacy. I still have to put myself on top. I have to pose that I am genetically superior to compensate. I say it's a compensation for a genetic recessive status.
Now that's real interesting what she's talking about concerning how even in the midst of a decline, there's always the need for the dominant society to prioritize themselves, or at least to create an illusion of propping themselves up as being superior, as still being number one. There is no such thing as a majority minority. You're either the minority or you're not. But like she said, it's a coping mechanism in order to still have that sense of I'm in power, we're in control.
Well, I think I was the first person to talk about white genetic annihilation in those terms, and that racism is ultimately a total system for white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on a planet that has the genetics and the demographics that exist on third planet from the sun, which is planet Earth. So I was the first to put it in those terms, and my thesis has not been refuted. I would say that if my definition is understood, that racism, white supremacy is the fear on the part of people who classify themselves as white about white genetic annihilation and the concern for white genetic survival, this would therefore mean logically and specifically that the focus has to be on Black males, because Black people have the greatest genetic potential to produce the black pigment melanin, which gives off skin color. And since we have the greatest, the highest level of genetically determined ability to produce this pigment that can cause white genetic annihilation, and it's only males who can impose sexual intercourse. And so the focus consciously, subconsciously has to zero in on the males. This is why I say that understanding, I'm not talking about institutional racism, I'm talking about a total system construct that develops out of certain patterns of thinking on the part of people who classify themselves as white relative to specific realities that exist on this planet. And so then once that is understood, that the fear of genetic annihilation that takes to the focus on the male, the black male person, as being the number one perceived threat, the number one enemy, and everything flows from that.
So I just wanted to once again pay my respect to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and make sure to uplift her, right, and lift her voice up to make sure that she gets her proper respect. Because, like I said, in the midst of the gaffe, you can say, that you saw at that rally that Trump attended, where the woman said, "Oh, this was a victory for white life." Like I said, from that point forward, you're going to see liberals try to take that and say, look at these racist conservatives. Look at these racist Republicans. Look at all this white supremacy going on their side. No, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was speaking about you, the white liberal, as well. So I just want to make sure that they don't really have too much of an opportunity to bastardize that and her talking points too much and steal it as if it's their own, so that they can point fingers at the Republicans without me letting them know, nope, she was talking about you too. Now, Pan-Africanism Strike Back. I don't know if he's still here, but he put a couple super chats in. Thank you very much, Pan-Africanism. And he said, "What's wrong with trying to save your race?" And you also had another comment as well. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I didn't say that there was anything wrong with it. From this point forward, though, the question then becomes, how do you now protect and save your race as well? So white people are doing what they're supposed to do. The dominant society is doing what they're supposed to do. Now, the real question is, are we doing what we're supposed to do? Now, speaking of the dominant society doing what they're supposed to do, one of the things that they've done by way of Clarence Thomas is that they're now making the effort to spin this narrative around and make black men the face of the Roe v. Wade reversal, and black men will be the face of the Supreme Court and everything negative that comes out of it from here on out via Clarence Thomas. Now, what happened is, after the reversal of Roe v. Wade, Clarence Thomas, like the big dummy that he is, opened his mouth and had some things to say about next on his hit list is going out there and getting rid of the what do you call it, the LGBTQ rights and their ability to get married, right? He went out there and he said something of that nature that was really stupid and silly because it just wasn't what's the word that I'm looking for? Not it wasn't wise, but it wasn't I don't know, forget it. It just wasn't a smart move, to say the very least. And with that, because the liberal is so cunning, the moment you give them an opening to take a narrative and spin it, they'll use it against you. The white liberal politically is the most cunning beast in the field. For as much as people love to look at and harp on the conservative and the white Republican, the white extremist, right? Like, what's his name? Peyton Grendon, I believe that was his name, that went and did what he did in Buffalo, New York. For as much as people love to put focus over there, the white liberal politically is the most wicked beast of them all. Because it's the white liberal that comes to you and comes to me and comes to us politically as a friend, only to stab us in the back and leave us to die. They do this consistently. You watch this happen front and center after the entire Black Lives Matter movement. if that's what you want to call it. Controlled opposition is really what it was. And for a season, they, liberals and Democrats and all that, they seem to somewhat pretend to care about black folks and their lives mattering and police shooting unarmed black men and all this kind of stuff. But the moment they snap their fingers, okay, it's enough of that. Biden won the election already. No more protesting. And everything and everybody scattered and went away. What happened afterwards? Anti-Asian hate popped up. And immediately, the white liberal and their media turned from Black Lives Matter to anti-Asian hate. And now folks that look like you and me became the face of anti-Asian hate. Anytime a video pops up of an Asian person, man or woman, getting hurt or harmed, it's always some random black man for no reason at all whatsoever that decided to just cock his fist back and bam, for no reason at all, as if there are not videos of white people and people of other races violating Asians in the same fashion. It may not necessarily be in the same fashion, but to some degree or another. I mean, if you leave it up to, I believe it's the anti-Asian hate. My eyes got really big just now. My bad. If you leave it up to the, I believe it's the anti-Asian hate organization website, and we discussed this before, they said that they recorded over 10,000 hate crime incidents. So out of 10,000 hate crime incidents, according to that particular website, to which we know the numbers are fabricated because we've seen the actual FBI data, we've seen the statistics, right? If you have 10,000 hate crime incidents, how is it possible that out of 10,000 hate crime incidents, the only ones that are captured on video seem to always and only be brothers that look like you and me? That's by design. And though Republicans and conservatives, they run with that on Fox News. They love showing black folks doing something wrong, right? But that narrative is initially facilitated by the white liberal and their media that decided to make us the face of anti-Asian hate. Okay. And now you see that they're doing the same thing with Clarence Thomas. Now, before I get into that, I'm just read off a couple super chats. Thank you very much. Everybody that's showing their support, I truly, truly, truly appreciate it. It's definitely needed. Shout out to Jerry Early. Thank you very much, Jerry Early. I saw Pan-Africanism Strikes Back. He dropped another super chat in. And also we have Big G, who's on the screen. It says, B1, keep up the great work. My brother, keep speaking truth to power. Thank you very much, Big G. And let me see if I can find very quickly what Pan-Africanism Strike Back. He said, Pan-Africanism Strike Back, he said, I don't have it in front of the screen right now, but he said, Clarence Thomas is smart. Beat them using their own founding documents. He's giving us game. Direct their butts right back to the Constitution. So that was Pan-Africanism Strikes Back comment. Thank you very much. Also, make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you haven't, and if you're new to the channel, please, please, please make sure you subscribe as well. So now let's carry on with the discussion. And let me move on to the next article, because I just want to show you right now. I want to play this quick video of Joe Biden pivoting, right? He's pivoting the conversation to Clarence Thomas, moving it away from the Supreme Court as a whole and making it about him. Okay. So let me pull that video up for you right now. Give me just a moment while I bring the screen back up in front of you.
My administration will remain vigilant as the implications of this decision play out. I've warned about how this decision risks the broader right to privacy for everyone. That's because Roe recognized the fundamental right to privacy that has served as a basis for so many more rights that we've come to take for granted, that are ingrained in the fabric of this country. The right to make the best decisions for your health. The right to use birth control, a married couple in the privacy of their bedroom, for God's sake. The right to marry the person you love. Justice Thomas said as much today. He explicitly called to reconsider the right of marriage equality, the right of couples to make their choices on contraception. This is extreme and dangerous path the court is now taking us on.
So now, because of Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court, but of course he's the face. They want to tell you who you can marry. They want to tell you about, contraceptives, what you're allowed to use, what you're not allowed to use. The Supreme Court is now getting ready to destroy everybody's life, and guess what? Clarence Thomas is now the face of it. And this literally happened 24 hours after the official ruling came down. Here's another video clip right here of the so-called people of color minions, that I'd like to call them. It's Lori Lightfoot, but we'll call them people of color liberal minions, who is here at a rally screaming out expletives to Clarence Thomas. Now, you all know how I like to keep things clean. I don't curse. I don't use profanity. I don't do that. So I want to give you a heads up now. She is going to say F Clarence Thomas, and you're going to hear F Clarence Thomas twice. So if you have children, I'm just letting you know there's going to be some profanity. Okay, I just wanted to let you know ahead of time.
And we know what happened with the Supreme Court yesterday. If you read Clarence Thomas' concurrence, he said, "Thank you, fuck Clarence Thomas." He thinks that we are going to stand idly by when they take our rights, our right to marry, our right to have children, our right to.
Clarence Thomas is taking your right to marry. He's taking your right to have children. He's taking your right to just have sex in your bedroom. Clarence Thomas is taking everything, okay? And then from this point forward, no less than 24 hours after the ruling came down, articles started popping up like crazy, left and right. Clarence Thomas signals interest in revisiting media libel standard. Here's another article right here on Bloomberg. This article is titled, Clarence Thomas says he would hear hate group appeal. I'm going to repeat that again. It says, Clarence Thomas says he would hear hate group appeal, revisit libel law. We have another article right here. Samuel L. Jackson calls out Clarence Thomas for leaving interracial marriage off list of targets. I mean, the media has been going nuts, blaming and making Clarence Thomas the face of the Roe v. Wade reversal, as well as the face of the Supreme Court in general. Let me remove this off the screen for just a second. See, from here on out, moving forward, the average person, they don't know who's on the Supreme Court. They can't tell you anybody's name. Most of you right now don't even remember old girl's name, whose last name is Jackson. You see how I can't even remember her name that just got nominated? Ketanji Jackson, I believe. Most of you forgot her name already. Most people forgot about that already. That's typically how it goes. But the name that you will remember, and that everyone who's not even in tune with the Supreme Court, what's going on like that from here on out, they will remember Clarence Thomas. Even after he's gone, whatever comes out of the Supreme Court that's negative from here on out, they will always go back and reference Clarence Thomas, essentially making us the face of all of these negative things that's happening within the Supreme Court. Now, I want to shout out a few more people. Like I said, I appreciate the support in the super chat. Thank you very much to everybody who's showing their support. Thank you, Ryan Glenn. Shout out to Ryan Glenn, who is a writer for my website, TD News Network. If you haven't read any of his articles, make sure you get to tdnewsnetwork.com. That is my news website. And Ryan Glenn does a phenomenal job at making sure to update my website and just have good and fresh content on there. There's a few people who have put their super chats up, but excuse me. Sorry if I missed it. But let's carry on with the conversation, with the discussion. You see, now this is my biggest issue with the fact that people all of a sudden want to jump down Clarence Thomas's throat. You see, it's not like I'm a fan of Clarence Thomas. I don't really care about Clarence Thomas. But we're not going to sit here and make Black folks, and particularly Black men, the face of the Supreme Court and the face of everything negative that comes out of the Supreme Court from here on out, even after he leaves and is deceased and gone. but then we're going to pretend as if Joe Biden hasn't spent his entire time in politics against abortion. This man spent 30 some odd years actively against, voting against, pushing back against abortion. And what the excuse is that liberals are going to tell me is that, well, Joe Biden has changed. No, he has not changed. He has not changed at all. And neither of these Democrats that are in office have changed or have become different or better people. If Joe Biden had changed, given the fact that you have full Democrats, Democrats run the White House, obviously, they run the House of Representatives, and they control the Senate. If they wanted to right now, they could have got rid of the filibuster, but they don't, because the filibuster is their convenient way out. That's their way out of not having to do anything for anybody, especially when it comes to Black Americans. They can always just conveniently blame the filibuster and say, look at these Republicans over here. If it wasn't for these Republicans and the filibuster, we would have been able to do something for you, but we can't. So in the meantime, just vote blue no matter who, right? So they're not trying to get rid of that. And I don't remember what the law was called, but there was something that wasn't done. They didn't do it in the Obama administration, and they also didn't do it. They haven't done it since Biden has been in office. And there's some sort of I don't remember what it's called, some sort of a law, if I'm not mistaken, or some sort of an amendment that they could have put in place by now to solidify the Roe v. Wade ruling, to make it at least a little bit harder to overturn. I don't know if it would have completely made it impossible to overturn, but it would have made it a lot more difficult to overturn. And they didn't do it. Why? Because Biden is against abortion. He doesn't care. The Supreme Court being packed with Republicans or conservatives, that's very convenient for him. That's very convenient for him. Because him being a man who's anti-abortion, he can always just turn around and say, hey, look at those Republicans over there. They did that. I wish there was something I could do about it. But you know what you can do? This midterm, vote blue no matter who. And then we'll see if we can figure something out from there, right? So now I want to get into that right now, too. I want to get into that. Oh, really? Just a quick second. Shout out to Tori and Rain Reloaded. I was actually speaking with Rob earlier, and Rob, I believe, called this out. Notice none of the other justices are coming to Clarence Thomas's defense. They're on code. Me and Rob were talking about that right before I went live. Clarence Thomas said what he said like a big dummy, right? He said what he said. And all the other defenses, all the other Supreme Court judges, they fell back. They said, oh, no, bro, you got it. They said, you got it, Clarence. Said, no, I'm not going to say nothing. All right, yeah, that's how you feel about LGBTQ? Okay. Now, we know they all feel the same thing. But like Torian said, they're on code. They said, oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and keep talking. And let the white liberals run off with that. Run off with it. Go ahead and make Black folks the face of all this. And that's what you see happening right now. Now, let's get into these articles very quickly concerning Joe Biden, because I want to drive this point to the ground. Joe Biden is 100% against abortion, 1,000% against it. That man has not changed, just like he hasn't changed from his stance of the crime bill up until now. He hasn't changed at all. But a lot of people don't know about Joe Biden's anti-abortion history. So let's get into that right now. Let me pull that screen up for you once again. And we're going to go through a couple articles, and then we're going to shut this thing down. Okay. So here's the first article right here from the Washington Post titled, "Abortion has long been complicated for Biden. Now he leads the fight." This was in May that they released this article, in May of this year. This is them making up excuses, for why Joe Biden was once against abortion, but now he's for it. And I just find it interesting that these guys, they never seem to have a change of heart until they're running for office. Once they're running for office, now all of a sudden they have a change of heart. Now, before I dive too deep into this article, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. There are 875 of you watching right now. So please hit the like button. Let's get the likes up. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. And you could also show your support to the channel through Patreon. The Patreon link is pinned in the live comment section above. You can do so via Super Chat. You could also do so via Cash App, $tdhiphop. That's $tdhiphop. All donations of that nature help. And it is much appreciated for the work that I put in on this channel. Now let's get into this article so we can see how fake Joe Biden actually is. Because like it says here, abortion has long been complicated for Biden. It's not really complicated. He's against it, always has been. Joe Biden became a senator in 1973, just 17 days before the Supreme Court decided the landmark abortion rights case Roe v. Wade. Soon after, the young senator, a practicing Catholic, told an interviewer that he disagreed with the decision and that he had views on such matters that made him about as liberal as your grandmother. Very condescending, but that is who Joe Biden is. And I quote, here's Joe Biden. "I don't like the Supreme Court's decision on abortion. I think we went too far," he concluded in 1974. "I don't think that a woman has the sole right to say what should happen to her body." So we're just going to act like Joe Biden wasn't thinking like this, that he didn't talk like this. And he kept talking like this all the way up until the point to which he was elected president. Let's carry on. This was in 1974. Now let's move forward to this article right here on NBC News. Joe Biden's long evolution on abortion rights still holds surprises. As senator from Delaware, he once supported stripping exceptions for, I'm not going to say these words, abuse from federal funding. If you're just listening kind of on audio, but you're not looking at the screen, the words that I don't want to say is it begins with an R-A-P, and then there's the last letter at the end. So basically, you're forcing yourself onto a woman. You know what that is. And the other word, INCES, and I won't say the last letter. That's when you'll just say a male forces himself onto a female family member and gets that female family member pregnant. Okay, but in order to not say those words, I'm just going to say abuse. And what you're going to see here in this article is that there were attempts by his own party, Democrats, to make exceptions to abortion to at least make sure that those who are abused, will be the exception to the rule concerning federal funding. And Joe Biden said, no, I'm not with none of that. Okay. Former Vice President Joe Biden's decade-long evolution on abortion rights has in many ways mirrored the changing attitudes of the Democrat Party, growing increasingly supportive over time. Once again, the excuses. But his past opposition to most federal funding for abortion services is more striking than previously recognized. According to an NBC News review of his Senate voting record, and includes repeated examples of Biden rejecting exceptions for victims of abuse that were supported by many members of his party at the time. I repeat, Biden repeatedly voted against, okay? He repeatedly voting against the possibility of federal funding going towards abortions for those who were abused. If there was any moment to bend the knee, for as much as you may be anti-abortion, I think that would be the moment for most of us. Any decent, kind-hearted individual, decent, kind-hearted human being, right? You may be against abortion, but when it comes to a woman being abused in some way, shape, or fashion, and now she's pregnant, I'm pretty sure at that point, that's where you'll bend the knee. But not Joe Biden. He repeatedly was against it. But you guys want to make Clarence Thomas the face of abortion. Okay, of anti-abortion. Okay, let's keep going. Here's a New York Times article. When Joe Biden voted to let states overturn Roe v. Wade. Okay? It was a new era in Washington in 1981, and abortion rights activists were terrified. With an anti-abortion President Ronald Reagan in power and Republicans controlling the Senate for the first time in decades, social conservatives pushed for a constitutional amendment to allow individual states to overturn Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court ruling that made abortion legal nationwide several years earlier. The amendment, which the National Abortion Rights Action League called the most devastating attack yet on abortion rights, all right? They call this the most devastating attack yet on abortion rights. Just want to make that clear. Cleared a key hurdle in the Senate Judiciary Committee in March 1982. Support came not only from Republicans, but from a 39-year-old second-term Democrat, Joseph R. Biden Jr. Okay? Joe Biden says, I'm probably a victim or a product, however you want to phrase it, on my background, Mr. Biden, a Roman Catholic, said at the time. The decision, he said, was the single most difficult vote I've cast as a senator. The bill never made it to the full Senate, and when it came back up the following year, Mr. Biden voted against it. His back and forth over abortion would become a hallmark of his political career. That is the hallmark of most Democrats' political career. If you notice, they're always the one. It's the Democrats / white liberals that you see who are always the ones who are wishy-washy on their concerning their voting patterns and what they do support and what they don't support. That's one of the things that kills me, and that is just so strikingly obvious, is that you'll see with conservatives and or Republicans, white supremacists or white extremists, whatever you want to call them, that group is very consistent. They'll say something that you don't like. They'll say something that you think is racist or discriminatory. If they said it in 1970, whatever, they're still saying it now in 1922. But it's the Joe Bidens and the Bernie Sanders and the Hillary Clintons and the Bill Clintons of the world that when you dig into their past, they're just as racist and anti-black and anti-whatever you might feel is progressive. They're just as anti as Mitch McConnell is. But all of a sudden, once they're running for office now, oh, I've had a change of heart. Once they tried to pull the wool over everybody's eyes once, as you saw with Joe Biden in, 1980, whatever, right? He voted one way one year. The next year, he switched up, trying to wash his hands of the situation, saying, whoopsies. That's what they always do. Why is it always the Democrats that's talking about whoopsies when it comes to particularly Black Americans? You notice that? It's never conservatives, white supremacists, Republicans, whatever, white extremists. It's never them. It's always a Democrat. It's always a white liberal that's coming to you talking about, whoopsies, that was a mistake, but I've changed. Vote blue no matter who. Let's carry on, okay? And we're going to shut this thing down soon. We're almost finished. Let me pull the screen back up in front of it. Okay. I just want to drive this point home. I got to drive it home. You're not about to throw Clarence Thomas in my face, making him the face of abortion in the face of the Supreme Court and everything negative that comes out of the Supreme Court from now on, using Clarence Thomas as a proxy for Black men, but then you're going to act like Joe Biden did not spend his entire political career against abortion. Now, here's a letter that was written by Joe Biden in 1994. And in this letter, it states that here in the highlighted section, Joe Biden said, I have consistently, on no fewer than 50 occasions, voted against federal funding of abortion. On no fewer than 50 occasions, this man voted against federal fundings of abortion. That was in 1994. Now we make our way up to 2006. This interview right here was in 2006. And let's hear what Joe Biden had to say in 2006.
Tell me about abortion. where do you stand, and how will you face that issue?
It's going to be very difficult. I do not view abortion as a choice and a right.
What? You don't view abortion as what? Let's hear that again.
You stand, and how will you face that issue?
It's going to be very difficult. I do not view abortion as a choice and a right. I think it's always a tragedy. And I think that it should be rare and safe. And I think we should be focusing on how to limit the number of abortions. And they ought to be able to have a common ground and consensus as to do that.
You see, if you want to watch this video in its entirety, it's called Texas Monthly Talk Joe Biden. Okay. What Joe Biden is doing right now, he literally just told you, I don't believe that it's a choice or a right. Like, you shouldn't be doing it. But then he immediately, because he's a clever, sly fox, he goes, I don't believe it's a choice or a right for you to have an abortion, but I do think it's a tragedy whenever an abortion happens. Sly fox. He's a shrewd politician. He knows how to flip it up and make it about and turn the conversation into something else, and how this is a tragedy, right? He immediately shifts it away from himself being anti-abortion and speaks as if it's such a horrible thing that they even happen. And maybe there's just a way that we can slow abortions down. But the reality is that the man literally just told you outside of his mouth that he's against it because it's not a right. You don't have a right to do it. Okay. Now, this last video that I want to play for you, it's not coming from Joe Biden, right? But it's coming from the woman that this whole fiasco has started over. It's coming from Jane Roe. I believe that's what her name is, Jane Roe. Now, real quick, for those of you, if you're not too familiar with the Roe v. Wade ruling, I'll just read this paragraph for you because I think it's relevant for me to read this off before I play the video of Jane Roe. Okay. The case was brought, Roe v. Wade. The case was brought by Norma McCorvey, known by her legal pseudonym Jane Roe, who in 1969 became pregnant with her third child. McCorvey wanted an abortion but lived in Texas, where abortion was illegal except when necessary to save the mother's life. Her attorneys, Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey, filed a lawsuit on her behalf in the U.S. federal court against her local district attorney, Henry Wade, alleging that Texas's abortion laws were unconstitutional. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas ruled in her favor and declared the relevant Texas abortion status unconstitutional. Now, this is what got everything in motion, okay? Jane Roe, whose name is Norma McCorvey, Jane Roe essentially was abused, okay? And after being abused, she became pregnant, wanted an abortion, lived in Texas, but couldn't get it. Lawsuit was filed. They won the lawsuit. Roe v. Wade is here. Now any and everybody can get an abortion whenever they feel like it. You don't got to take personal responsibility. Don't worry about wearing protection. No, none of that stuff. Just go ahead. You get pregnant. Don't worry about it. Go to the doctor, get an abortion. It's all because of her, right? But she's a liar. She's a liar because none of what she said happened. Kind of similar to the woman that framed Emmett Till to a degree, right? So let's get into that right now. And what I'm going to do with this video, on 2 occasions, the R word came up. Hopefully I will be able to mute the R word in time before they say it twice. So if you don't know, you can't see me right now, but I got my notes in front of me, 4 seconds and 15 seconds. Okay, make sure you hit the mute button. So let me play this clip for you real quick because this woman is a liar, and everything that we're seeing that has transpired thus far is based on a lie.
Jane Roe's story was a terrible one. She said she had been gotten pregnant, was desperate to get an abortion. That's what everyone believed, as long as Jane Roe remained anonymous. When she went public, she told a different story.
You were right. You were in Georgia.
No, I wasn't.
You were not.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, so all those stories that are in the books and so forth are not true?
Yes, sir. Yes.
they're not true.
Right.
And it turned out that lying wasn't the only embarrassment this darling of the pro-choice forces presented. In her personal treatise published last year, Norma McCorvey told the story of her somewhat sordid life. Then she still adamantly supported abortion. Now she adds that to the list of sins she took with her into the baptismal pool.
I've cheated people out of money. I've sold drugs. I was an abusive alcoholic for many years. I've done a lot against his teachings. But I think the far greater sin that I did was to be the plaintiff in Roe versus Wade.
So she said her greatest sin was being the plaintiff in Roe versus Wade. She lied about the whole situation. She was not gang abused as she said she was. She claimed that she was gang abused. And that's why she got pregnant. It did not happen. She lied. And that was the greatest sin she committed, she said, was being a plaintiff in the Roe v. Wade court, in the Roe v. Wade trial. And now here we are, 30 some odd years later, or longer than that, I believe, 50 some odd years later, 49 years later, whatever, all of this hoopla over a lie, all over a lie. I find that very interesting. And despite that, it's the fact that it's a lie, nobody cares. Despite the fact that Joe Biden spent 30 plus years from the documents that I showed you from 1974 all the way up until 2006, his man was very consistent with being anti-abortion. Nobody cares. But they want to make Clarence Thomas, and essentially by proxy, they're using Clarence Thomas, meaning black men. They want to make us the face of being anti-abortion. They want to make us the face of this whole Roe v. Wade reversal, as well as any and everything negative that comes out of the Supreme Court from this moment forward. That's what's happening here. And that's what you're going to see continue on. You're going to continue to see Clarence Thomas be the face of anything negative coming out of the Supreme Court, as well as, and I believe the closer that we get to election time, the more and more you're going to hear from the liberal side a bastardization of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's theory on white genetic annihilation, right? The system of racism, white supremacy exists for the purposes of preventing white genetic annihilation. You're going to hear a bastardization of it coming from liberals, in which they're taking it to shift the focus directly on conservatives and Republicans and saying, yeah, see, these are the bad guys. But no, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was talking about you, the white liberal, as well. She was talking about you. Don't ever let that go over your head. Like I said at the beginning of this video, the only difference between the white liberal and the conservative is that they have a difference in opinion concerning how things should operate culturally. The white liberal may not necessarily care so much about having the large numbers and we have the #1 population here, as long as they control the economy and the resources and all the businesses and how everything works in the country. As long as they run things economically, as long as that racial wealth gap remains the way that it is, they're perfectly fine with it. That's why you see, as I've said in numerous videos, in all these democratic cities and towns, whether we're talking about Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York, the racial wealth gap has not closed there. If the Democrats were who they said they were, there would be no racial wealth gap in those cities. But the racial wealth gap exists there, and a whole lot more. And they're not making any attempt to solve or fix any of those problems there, because the white liberal is just as wicked, if not more so, than the so-called conservative white supremacists or white extremists. And with all that being said, that's it for today's video. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Please hit the thumbs up button, the like button on your way out. If you have not subscribed already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Show your love in Super Chat. If you appreciated today's show, you're not going to get this type of information on MSNBC and on CNN. They're going to flip the script and make this stuff about any and everything else but what it needs to be about. And it should be about the fact that Joe Biden has not done anything to make it a point to stop or prevent what has come to fruition. They're not trying to get rid of the filibuster. They didn't put any of the protections in place that would help Roe v. Wade stay intact. And for the record, I'm against abortion, so I don't really care that it got overturned. You know, I think this victory. But at the same time, too, when it comes to special exceptions concerning those who are abused, well, yes, then it's necessary. If you were abused, of course, you know, carry on. You should do what you need to do. But your boy Joe Biden was against all of that. And that's where the conversation needs to remain, so that we know who these wicked demons actually are. That's Joe Biden, his administration, and the liberals. I'm not telling you that Republicans are your friends. I'm not telling you that conservatives are your friends. We have no friends. All we have is us, okay? But I need you to understand that these Democrats and these liberals are definitely not your friends. They're only here to serve. They're only here to use and abuse us, take our pain, use it for their own political leverage, just to leave us lying dead on the side of the road with no legislation for us, no funds for us, as I go through over and over again on this channel, while making it a point to prioritizing every group over us. So with all that being said, I'm out of here. Thank you very much. Hit the like button on your way out, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.